On a cold February evening in 2004, a young nursing student climbed into her car and drove away without telling anyone exactly where she was going. Within hours, the vehicle would be found crashed on a quiet road in rural New Hampshire. Witnesses saw the car. A local resident spoke briefly with the driver. Police arrived just minutes later, but the young woman was gone. More than 2 decades later, no one has been able to answer the question that has haunted investigators, her family, and countless followers of the case. What really happened to Maura Murray? Unlike many mysteries that slowly fade from public memory, Maura's disappearance has only become more puzzling with time. Every new theory seems to create even more questions. Was she running away to start over? Did she become lost in the freezing wilderness? Or did someone cross her path in the few critical minutes before police arrived? The answers may lie in details that, at first glance, seemed almost ordinary. At the beginning of 2004, Maura Murray was 21 years old. She was a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and had previously attended the United States Military Academy at West Point before transferring. Friends and family described her as intelligent, athletic, and determined. She had competed in track and cross-country and was known for setting high expectations for herself. Like many college students, however, Maura also faced the pressures of balancing school, work, relationships, and family responsibilities. According to those who knew her, she had experienced several stressful events in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. None of them seemed extraordinary on their own, but together they painted the picture of someone carrying a heavy emotional burden. One incident happened just days before she vanished. Court records show that Maura was involved in a single-vehicle crash while driving her father's car near the University of Massachusetts campus. No one was seriously injured, but the accident added another layer of stress. Her father later traveled to Amherst, and together they discussed replacing the damaged vehicle. Then came Monday, February 9, 2004. Earlier that day, Maura emailed several professors and her employer, saying she would be away for about a week because of what she described as a family emergency. Investigators later reported that no such emergency had been identified within her immediate family. Why she sent that message remains one of the many unanswered questions in the case. Evidence later recovered suggested she had searched online for directions to destinations in northern New England and had withdrawn nearly all the money from her bank account, about $280. She also purchased a small amount of alcohol before leaving Amherst. According to investigators, there has never been conclusive evidence explaining exactly where she intended to go or who, if anyone, she planned to meet. As daylight faded, Maura drove north in her black Saturn sedan. Shortly after 7:25 p.m., her vehicle crashed on Route 112 near the town of Haverhill, New Hampshire. The accident occurred on a sharp curve known for being difficult to navigate, especially during winter. A nearby resident, who looked out after hearing the collision, later reported seeing the driver outside the vehicle. Another local resident, driving a school bus home after completing his route, stopped to check whether she needed help. According to his account, the young woman appeared shaken but declined his offer to call emergency services. She reportedly said she had already contacted roadside assistance. The bus driver returned home only a short distance away and called 911 himself. That decision would mark the beginning of one of the most closely examined timelines in modern missing person investigations. Police records indicate that the first responding officer arrived only minutes after the emergency call. Yet when officers reached the crash site, the Saturn was empty. There were no obvious footprints leading away from the road despite the snowy conditions. There was no sign of a struggle. No confirmed witness reported seeing Maura leave in another vehicle. The area was searched, but the young nursing student had seemingly vanished in an astonishingly short window of time. Investigators immediately faced a question that still defines the case today. How could someone disappear so completely between the moment a witness last saw her and the arrival of law enforcement only minutes later? That tiny gap in time, measured not in hours but in minutes, would become the foundation for every theory that followed. By the morning after the crash, what had started as a routine response to a single vehicle accident had become something far more serious. Police secured the area around Maura Murray's abandoned Saturn and began piecing together the events of the previous evening. Inside the vehicle, they found several personal belongings, including school materials and some of the alcohol she had purchased earlier that day. According to investigators, there was also evidence that some wine had spilled inside the car, leading officers to consider whether alcohol may have played a role in the crash itself. However, no conclusion could be reached because the driver was no longer at the scene. One question quickly became central to the investigation. Why would someone leave the relative safety of a crashed vehicle on a freezing February night? At first, authorities considered a simple explanation. It was possible that Maura had walked away to avoid speaking with police after the accident. She had recently been involved in another crash, and investigators acknowledged that fear of legal consequences might have influenced her decision to leave before officers arrived. But that theory became more difficult to support as the hours passed. Temperatures that night were well below freezing. Snow covered much of the surrounding landscape, and dense forests stretched for miles in nearly every direction. If Maura had wandered into the woods, search teams believed there should have been tracks or other signs of her movement. Within days, an extensive search operation was underway. Teams of local officers, state police, search and rescue volunteers, and trained tracking dogs combed the area around the crash site. Aircraft searched from above while investigators carefully examined nearby roads, wooded areas, and properties. According to authorities, the searches produced no confirmed evidence that Maura had traveled deep into the surrounding forest. Search dogs were brought to the scene in an effort to follow her scent. One dog reportedly tracked a scent for a short distance along the roadway before it appeared to end abruptly. That finding led investigators to consider another possibility. If the scent truly ended on the road, had Maura entered another vehicle? Police have never confirmed that this happened, but the possibility has remained one of the most discussed aspects of the case. No verified witness has ever reported seeing her get into a car, and no physical evidence has established that another vehicle was involved. Even so, the absence of footprints and the limited scent trail kept the question alive. As investigators reconstructed the timeline, they focused on the narrow window between the last known sighting and the arrival of the first responding officer. The estimates varied slightly depending on witness accounts, but the gap appeared to be only a matter of minutes. In that remarkably short period, Maura had disappeared without leaving behind any confirmed trail. Attention soon turned to everyone who had been near Route 112 that evening. Investigators interviewed local residents, motorists, and anyone who might have passed through the area. Several people reported seeing emergency lights or the crashed vehicle, but none provided a definitive account explaining where Maura went after leaving her car. Meanwhile, detectives expanded their investigation beyond New Hampshire. They began examining Maura's life in the days leading up to her disappearance. Friends, classmates, professors, co-workers, and family members were interviewed in an effort to understand whether she had planned to leave voluntarily or whether something unexpected had happened after the crash. Investigators reviewed her recent activities, including the emails she had sent claiming there was a family emergency. According to authorities, no evidence ever confirmed that such an emergency existed. They also examined the directions she had searched online and the phone records available at the time. Despite these efforts, no clear destination emerged. Her family consistently rejected the idea that Maura intended to disappear permanently. They described her as someone who remained deeply connected to those she loved, even if she occasionally sought time alone during stressful periods. As media coverage increased, so did public interest. National television programs featured the mystery, newspapers revisited the timeline, and online communities began analyzing every known detail. Some discussions generated useful public tips, while others fueled speculation unsupported by evidence. Investigators repeatedly urged the public to distinguish between verified facts and unconfirmed theories. Over time, numerous possibilities were suggested. Some believed Maura had become lost in the wilderness and had simply never been found. Others argued that she may have accepted a ride from a passing motorist after the crash. There were also theories involving foul play, though authorities have never publicly identified a suspect or announced evidence proving that a crime occurred. Each theory attempted to explain the same mystery. None fully accounted for every known fact. And then investigators encountered information that added yet another layer of uncertainty. Details from Maura's final days that suggested her disappearance might not have been a completely spontaneous decision. Whether those details pointed to careful planning or simply reflected the actions of a stressed college student remains one of the biggest unanswered questions in the entire case. As the investigation continued, detectives found themselves facing a difficult reality. There was no confirmed sighting of Maura Murray after the crash on Route 112. Without a clear trail, investigators had to consider multiple possibilities at the same time, knowing that each one pointed in a very different direction. One of the biggest challenges was understanding Maura's state of mind in the days before she disappeared. Friends and family acknowledged that she had experienced several stressful events in a short period. She was balancing the demands of nursing school, recovering from a recent car accident, and dealing with personal pressures that investigators later examined closely. Still, those who knew her best consistently said they saw no evidence that she intended to disappear permanently. According to investigators, Maura had packed some clothing before leaving Amherst and searched for lodging in northern New England. She also emailed professors saying she would be away for a week. Those actions suggested that she expected to be gone for at least a few days. But there was an important detail that didn't fit. There has never been verified evidence that she checked into a hotel, rented a cabin, met with another person, or arrived at any planned destination. Despite years of investigation, no confirmed financial transactions, surveillance footage, or credible eyewitness accounts have placed her anywhere after the crash. That left investigators with a troubling question. If Maura had a destination in mind, why did every trace of that plan disappear with her? As the years passed, authorities revisited the evidence several times. New investigators reviewed the original case files, hoping that advances in forensic science or fresh perspectives might uncover something that had been overlooked. Searches of the surrounding area continued over the years. Some focused on nearby woods, while others examined abandoned structures and private properties with the permission of owners. Specialized equipment, including ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs, was used during certain searches. Although investigators collected information from these operations, none produced confirmed evidence explaining what happened to Maura. The lack of physical evidence became one of the most frustrating aspects of the case. In many missing person investigations, detectives can follow a trail of phone activity, financial records, DNA, or witness statements. In Maura's case, those traditional investigative paths seemed to end almost as suddenly as her footprints. The mystery also attracted enormous public attention. Podcasts, documentaries, books, and online forums devoted thousands of hours to analyzing every available document, interview, and timeline. Amateur investigators created maps, reconstructed driving routes, and debated witness statements in remarkable detail. While this widespread interest kept the case in the public eye, it also created challenges. Investigators received countless tips over the years. Some appeared promising at first but ultimately could not be verified. Others were based entirely on speculation or rumors that spread online without supporting evidence. Authorities repeatedly emphasized an important point. Public theories should never be confused with established facts. One of the most debated questions has always been whether Maura encountered another person after leaving her vehicle. Because the scent trail reportedly ended near the roadway, some investigators acknowledged that entering another vehicle remained one possible explanation. However, police have never confirmed that this occurred, nor have they identified a driver connected to her disappearance. Another theory suggested that she may have become disoriented in the freezing conditions and succumbed to the harsh environment. Yet experienced search personnel noted that extensive efforts were conducted shortly after she vanished. While no search can guarantee complete coverage, the absence of confirmed evidence in the surrounding wilderness has continued to fuel debate about whether that explanation fully accounts for the available facts. Throughout the investigation, Maura's family remained determined to find answers. They worked closely with law enforcement, spoke publicly about the case, and encouraged anyone with credible information to come forward. Over the years, anniversaries of her disappearance became moments of renewed public attention, often bringing new searches and additional media coverage. Even after 2 decades, investigators have not closed the case. Instead, it remains an active missing person investigation, meaning authorities continue to evaluate new information whenever credible leads emerge. Then, years after the initial search, investigators conducted another significant operation connected to the case. The renewed activity immediately captured national attention and raised hopes that the mystery might finally be nearing a resolution. But what those searches uncovered and what they failed to uncover would leave the public with just as many questions as answers. Years passed, but the questions surrounding Maura Murray's disappearance never faded. Every few years, new information or renewed investigative activity would bring the case back into the national spotlight. Each development sparked hope among Maura's family and the many people who had followed the mystery from the beginning. But despite decades of work, the central question remained unchanged. What happened to Maura Murray after she walked away from her crashed car? Investigators continued to review evidence as technology improved. Old records were re-examined, witness statements were compared again, and tips from the public were carefully evaluated. According to authorities, every credible lead was considered, no matter how much time had passed. In 2022, investigators carried out another significant search connected to the case. Law enforcement officers searched a property in Haverhill, New Hampshire, not far from where Maura's Saturn had been found in 2004. The operation drew widespread media attention and renewed public interest. For many observers, it seemed possible that the investigation had reached a turning point. However, after the search concluded, officials confirmed only that evidence had been collected for examination. They did not announce that Maura had been found or that the search had solved the case. As with previous investigative efforts, authorities released very little information about what had been recovered, explaining that protecting the integrity of an active investigation remained a priority. That silence frustrated many people. After nearly 2 decades, it was understandable that the public wanted answers. But investigators have consistently explained that releasing incomplete information can sometimes jeopardize future investigative efforts or discourage witnesses from coming forward. Meanwhile, Maura's family continued their search. They gave interviews, participated in documentaries, and encouraged anyone with reliable information to contact law enforcement. Throughout the years, they emphasized that their goal was not to fuel speculation but to find the truth. One of the reasons this case has endured is that it offers no simple explanation. If Maura chose to leave voluntarily, there has never been verified evidence showing where she went or how she supported herself afterward. No confirmed financial activity, verified communication, or authenticated sighting has established that she remained alive after the night of February 9, 2004. If she became lost in the wilderness, decades of searches have failed to provide a definitive answer. And if she encountered another person after leaving her vehicle, investigators have never publicly identified evidence proving who that individual was or what may have happened next. Each possibility explains some of the known facts. None explains all of them. Over the years, investigators have repeatedly reminded the public that theories are not evidence. The internet has produced countless explanations, some elaborate and convincing on the surface. But many rely on assumptions rather than verified facts. The confirmed timeline remains surprisingly short. Maura left Amherst on February 9, 2004. She crashed her Saturn on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. A witness spoke with her shortly afterward. Another witness called 911. Within minutes, the first responding officer arrived. Maura Murray was gone. Everything after that point remains uncertain. Her disappearance has influenced the way many missing person investigations are discussed today. It highlights how critical the first few hours can be, how difficult it is to investigate a case with limited physical evidence, and how unanswered questions can persist for decades despite the dedication of investigators, volunteers, and families. For Maura's loved ones, the mystery has never been about headlines or public fascination. It has always been about bringing a daughter, sister, and friend home, or at the very least, learning what happened that winter night. As of today, Maura Murray's disappearance remains an active missing person case. Law enforcement agencies continue to encourage anyone with credible, previously unreported information to come forward. Even a detail that once seemed insignificant could help investigators better understand those final known minutes. Until that day comes, the road in Haverhill stands as a reminder of one of America's most enduring unsolved mysteries. A young woman began what appeared to be an ordinary drive. A brief conversation followed a minor crash. Minutes later, she vanished. More than 20 years have passed. Yet one question continues to echo through every investigation, every search, and every new lead.